Whether Donald Trump can maintain the surprisingly wide support he won in 2016 from an unexpected group of Republican voters may determine how he does in the 2024 GOP presidential race. The majority of white evangelical Christians who voted for Trump in 2016 was probably the biggest surprise, as many analysts had predicted that they would oppose a twice-divorced New Yorker who had previously expressed support for abortion rights. Trump's ability to create a brand new fault line in the GOP primary electorate was crucial to that breakthrough. The difference between Republican voters who identify as evangelical Christians and those who do not has historically been a significant dividing line. Trump, however, effectively divided the GOP electorate in 2016 along educational lines, winning over voters without a four-year college degree, regardless of whether they identified as evangelical Christians. Senator Ted Cruz, Trump's main rival on the right in 2016, had anticipated that his large margins among these non-college evangelicals would help him win a number of culturally conservative states, especially throughout the South. If anything, those evangelical blue-collar Christians could be even more crucial to Trump's chances in 2024. Early 2024 GOP presidential preference polls indicate that Trump's standing among Republicans with a four-year college degree, including both those who identify as evangelical Christians and those who do not, may be even worse than it was in 2016. Because of these skeptic attitudes, Trump will likely need to increase his support among the non-college Republicans, who have always made up his most ardent supporters, if he wants to fend off the challenge that may arise from the likes of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and others in a field of uncertain size. Additionally, a sizable percentage, sometimes even the majority, of those Republican primary voters who are not college students identify as evangelical Christians. If the former president is unable to replicate the elevated level of blue-collar evangelical support he attained in his stunning race to the nomination in 2016, he will find it challenging to build a winning primary coalition, given that some prominent evangelical figures are openly joining other GOP leaders in suggesting the party move on from Trump in 2024. Evangelical white Protestants have been steadily losing ground in society as a whole. According to findings from the nonpartisan Public Religion Research Institute scheduled for release later this month, they now make up just under 1/7 of adults, down from almost 1/4 in 2006. However, they continue to be a much more important part of the GOP coalition. According to PRRI data, slightly less than 1/3 of Republican Party members identify as evangelical Christians. White evangelicals were predicted to make up nearly 2/5 of the likely GOP primary electorate in 2024 by veteran GOP pollster Whit Ayers in a recent survey for the conservative website The Bulwark. According to a cumulative analysis of the 2016 exit polls by CNN polling director Jennifer Agiesta, white evangelical or born-again voters made up just over half of GOP primary voters in 2016, with non-white evangelicals contributing an additional few percentage points. The exit polls were conducted by Edison Research for a coalition of media organizations, including CNN. That cumulative analysis discovered evangelicals to be a higher percentage of the GOP vote than those other sources, most likely due to the following two factors. First, because it asks voters whether they consider themselves evangelical or born-again, which captures a small percentage of Catholics who identify as born-again, and second, because the competitive primary states in which exit polls were conducted in 2016 lean more heavily toward the South than the Midwest. The most significant factor in the two competitive GOP presidential primaries that took place just before Trump's victory in 2016 was the divide between voters who identify as evangelical Christians and those who do not. Both the GOP presidential primaries in 2008 and 2012 ended up being a contest between a candidate who primarily relied on support from evangelical Christians, Rick Santorum in 2012 and Mike Huckabee in 2008, and one who primarily relied on non-evangelicals, John McCain in 2008 and Mitt Romney in 2012. According to cumulative analyses of the GOP primary exit polls from those years conducted by Gary Langer of ABC News, the non-evangelical candidate won the nomination each time with a pattern of support that was nearly identical. McCain in 2008 and Romney in 2012 each won about half of the non-evangelical GOP primary voters, which allowed them to win despite winning only about 1/3 of those who did identify as evangelicals. In those earlier elections, education had begun to emerge as a key differentiator. Romney, for example, had won college-educated voters in more states than he had non-college voters. But in those earlier elections, whether or not voters were evangelicals remained the most crucial factor at crucial moments. For instance, McCain won a much higher proportion of non-evangelical voters than evangelical voters in the pivotal 2008 South Carolina primary, and there were hardly any differences between voters with and without college degrees in each group. The evangelical divide was once more much more influential in determining support for Romney, Santorum, and Newt Gingrich, the three main contenders, in the 2012 South Carolina primary than the educational divide. In 2016, Trump reoriented that axis. He emphasized the importance of education to voters in the contest. Almost all states and almost all important constituencies, including evangelical Christians, were affected by this educational fault line. According to Jim Guth, a political scientist at Furman University in South Carolina, the dynamic of education levels replacing evangelical affiliation as the key factor dividing Republican voters was unique to Trump. You don't typically find that kind of conflict among Republican candidates. Trump's support didn't differ as much between those two extremes as McCain and Romney did, who were very strong among voters who weren't evangelical and quite weak among evangelicals. Instead, Trump consistently performed much better among voters without a four-year college degree than among those who did throughout the crucial 2016 elections. Due to the fact that those without degrees voted more like other blue-collar Republicans than they did like the white-collar evangelicals in 2016, Trump was able to offset Cruz's anticipated advantage among evangelicals. According to GOP pollster Ayers, the education divide has been a better indicator of Donald Trump's support among Republicans than the evangelical-non-evangelical divide. The most crucial factor was how that pattern behaved in South Carolina, which, aside from one GOP primary since 1980, has consistently supported the eventual victor in 2012 when Gingrich unexpectedly carried the state. It was essential to Cruz's efforts to defeat Trump because evangelical voters made up such a significant portion of the electorate there. The main reason Trump won was because he won twice as many evangelicals without a degree, 44%, an even greater share than he won among non-college voters who were not evangelicals, according to exit polls, even though he only carried 22% of college-educated evangelicals there. Cruz's campaign made it known that they expected to rebound by defeating the New Yorker in the upcoming slate of Southern contests, where evangelical Christians typically make up the majority of GOP primary voters, even after Trump's victory in South Carolina. Instead, according to exit polls, Trump tied with these voters in Arkansas and Missouri, and defeated Cruz among non-college white evangelicals in Tennessee, Virginia, Alabama, Georgia, and Michigan. Trump's ability to win all those states and ultimately the nomination fairly easily was largely due to this strength. According to AGS's comprehensive analysis of the 2016 exit polls, Trump won only 32% of all evangelicals, with a college degree in all the contest states. However, Trump won 45% of all evangelicals who lack a degree. According to veteran Republican evangelical strategist Ralph Reed, that was enough to give Trump a slim majority of the white evangelical vote overall, to the surprise of almost everyone. Trump consistently performs poorly among Republican voters who have a college education, but that was enough to propel him to a convincing victory, when combined with his strong support among non-evangelicals without a degree, whether or not they identified as evangelicals. According to early predictions, evangelical voters will be among those who view education as a major issue in the GOP presidential election of 2024. Ayers claimed that in the most recent 2024 poll he conducted for The Bulwark, DeSantis comfortably led Trump among both college-educated evangelicals and non-evangelicals, with and without a degree, while Trump ran roughly even with DeSantis among non-college evangelicals, when the two were matched with a large field of potential candidates. I compiled the results from the 2024 GOP primary polls conducted by Echelon Insights, another Republican polling organization, between November and January. According to that poll, even in a crowded field, Trump still manages to attract close to half of non-college white evangelicals, and comfortably leading DeSantis with them, a better showing than Ayers found. However, the firm discovered that Trump was losing to DeSantis among the college-educated evangelicals, winning only about one-fourth of them. According to Nolan Combs, the firm's research director, in a two-way race, Trump attracted roughly 3/5 of the non-college evangelicals, while DeSantis attracted a mirror image of approximately 3/5 of the college-educated evangelicals. Trump's favorability rating among non-college white Republican evangelicals was shockingly 17 percentage points higher, according to a recent PRRI study. PRRI's studies have found that nearly 3/4 of the total white evangelical Protestant population lacks a college degree. Because college-educated voters turn out in bigger numbers, the balance is somewhat closer in the GOP primary, with the non-college side representing around 55% of the total white evangelical vote, according to the exit poll analysis. Still, evangelicals without a degree represent a larger block of Republican primary voters than either evangelicals with a degree or non-evangelicals with or without one, the exit poll analysis found. That means that for all of Trump's other challenges, they would provide him a formidable base if he can hold them. Can he? National polling PRRI released this month found that huge majorities of those non-college white evangelical Republicans express many of the cultural and racial anxieties Trump has tapped throughout his political career. 70% or more of those non-college evangelicals agreed that discrimination against whites is now as big a problem as bias against minorities, that the growing number of immigrants threaten American customs and values, and that society is growing too soft and feminine, according to unpublished results PRRI provided to CNN. 7 in 10 of the non-college evangelical Republicans also strongly supported the Supreme Court decision overturning Roe v. Wade. Notably, fewer college-educated white evangelicals expressed each of those beliefs, the survey found. The politics of grievance does have a stronger appeal to those without a college degree, said Robert P. Jones, founder and president of the PRRI. Still, the share of college-educated white evangelicals who agree with those core Trump cultural arguments remains much larger than the share who express support for Trump himself in 2024. Ayers, like others I spoke with, believes the gap between college and non-college white evangelical Republicans can be explained less by differing views on issues than by their divergent responses to Trump's bellicose persona. I think its style, attitude, anti-establishment approach, as much as it is specific cultural issues related to evangelical support, like being pro-life on abortion or anti-gay marriage, Ayers said. It is cultural and economic and fundamentally anti-establishment, populist if you will. Booth said that DeSantis, with a somewhat more buttoned-down, if only faintly less combative, style than Trump may be well suited to attract college-educated Republican voters, especially evangelicals, who don't like the Trump style, even though they like the Trump policies. With DeSantis already fighting the culture wars in a way that establishes his social conservative credentials, Booth said it's likely that the middle-class and upper-middle-class evangelical types will certainly find him more appealing than Trump, especially after the events of January 6. Dave Wilson, president and executive director of the Palmetto Family Council, the most prominent social conservative organization in South Carolina, also sees an opening emerging for DeSantis or other alternatives to Trump, less on educational than generational lines. You've got a group of people who are followers of Donald Trump from a populist standpoint, he said. But I keep seeing there are other groups who are saying, we are looking for a new standard bearer of the conservative message, someone who can take that beyond the next 8 years to the next 2 or 3 decades. But DeSantis, if he runs, might face the same quandary as Trump's opponents in 2016. While Trump consolidated blue-collar Republicans to a remarkable extent in a crowded field, college-educated Republicans, whether evangelical or not, never coalesced behind a single alternative. Ultimately, they split their vote among too many competitors to decide the outcome. On paper, many of the other Republicans considering the 2024 race, a list that includes Nikki Haley, Larry Hogan, Chris Sununu, Glenn Youngkin, Mike Pompeo and Tim Scott, again appear better positioned to attract college-educated voters, and to poach significant numbers of non-college voters from Trump. To prevent another divide-and-conquer win for Trump, some other candidate almost certainly will need to crack his defenses among Republicans without a college degree, including blue-collar evangelical Christians. For the rest of the GOP field and for the party itself, the challenge will be to connect with those voters, without taking absolutist positions on cultural issues that alienate the socially moderate white-collar suburbanites, who have provided decisive support for Democrats in the Trump year. That's the dilemma. Can anyone win a Republican nomination and win the general election? Said Booth. Winning both, it seems to me, is not an easy task, and it's getting harder as time goes on.